My name is Lynn Shupp. Let me introduce myself first as the new president of the Historical Society. When I was supposed to do this presentation, I should have just been a lackey to Jane, but since Jane has now moved and is safe and sound at her new location down south and is probably much warmer than all of us, so that's my first hat of the day. Before I start, because it is all about giving credit where credit is due. So all of the information that I'm going to be talking about comes in this lovely book. If you don't have one of these, every once in a while they come back to the Historical Society for sale. So definitely, if you find some of the things that I'm talking about interesting, this is a great book for reference. And we have other ones as well. It's just I sat down and nerded it out with this one. So, now, I am not about just standing up here and speaking at you. Please, by all means, if you have a story that goes with something, all these pictures are not going to relate to all these things that I'm telling you. I just picked some old pictures that either maybe might trigger a memory for someone, or might cause them to be interested of, I wonder more about it. Guess what? If you come to the Historical Society, the center, you can look at, they do a great job, and I say they because I have nothing to do with this. They do a great job of decorating our back room. This back room is all about showing our history, but the front room also had these really cool flippy things, and a lot of the pictures with the information is on them. So even if you just want to come in and nosy, please do. When the center's open, you are more than welcome. Alrighty? So, why is history important? To me, why is history important? Because if we don't know where we came from, how do we know where we're going? Also, I'm going to show my age. There's certain things in here I can't imagine not being here, because being born in 1972, they existed. So I don't know this town without some of the things that I'm going to show you, I'm going to talk about. So that's why, to me, history is important. The other thing too is, if you know the history behind something, I think it causes a passion within you to want to save it. Thanks to Mr. Delich, this is all his fault. That is why I love Palmerton. I had his class in whatever grade I had him, and I will never forget that class. And that is what made me have Palmerton pride. My mom was from Lehighton. My dad was from Palmerton. They met at La Rosa's skating rink, and I hear the giggles because I know that was a path for a lot of different people. I used to hear them talk about when they would go dancing here, or go see a country and western movie at the Roach House, aka the Ranch House. You know, so I got to hear these stories, and my mom was always into history, so that just gave me my love affair also with just finding out history about anything. So that's why I personally think history is important. So, I said, we're 125 years young. We're babies in Carbon County. We are like one of the youngest communities in Carbon County. And that's awesome because we have so much more potential. I mean, we started this town, I wish I could walk back. I wish I could put on a cloak and go back in time and see what it was truly like in its heyday. Because from reading these stories in that book and then taking all these lovely notes, because I like old school, it was fascinating. Like, they literally brought in the best of the best to make this town what it was. And thank God we had Stephen Palmer, because he actually believed he wanted the people who chose to live in this community to love it and make it better. He didn't want to hold anybody back, which for that time is impressive. So, that is where we're going to start. So, Why is Delaware Avenue so wide? Anybody want to give me some answers or guesses?
It's because originally they were hoping to put a trolley in to take the plant workers back and forth between the plants to get them to work.
So I thought that was it as well. That could have probably been part of it. It was supposed to take people from Allentown to Stroudsburg. So that's how long that trolley line was supposed to be. I was shocked to hear it. But absolutely, that most certainly, because honestly, my first thought was, because I know like they did different things to like bring people in from Little Gap, all that, like with the Chestnut Ridge Railroad, those kind of things. So that was my initial thought with the trolley as well. But when I read that, I'm like, that would have, I mean, think of that venture. That would have been a lot of work to make that happen. But obviously the trolley did not come. But we do have beautiful wide streets, which is wonderful. Because if you drive through some of the other towns, and they're really tight, it makes me nervous because I'm waiting to take off one of my mirrors. So, why so many different kind of churches do we have in this lovely town? Anybody want to venture a guess? All right, go ahead out there.
Because of all the different types of people that came to Palmerton as immigrants and how they all had different denominations that they participated in.
You are correct. So again, I mean, when at the Zinc Company, they would literally have a sign in 5 different languages telling those people like not to electrocute themselves, something rather important. But it had to be in 5 different languages because we were so diverse. That's why we were a melting pot. And I think that's awesome. I mean, my dad always said about being raised up on the West End, he would have a Mexican family next to him. He had Czechoslovakian people right next to him. He was Pennsylvania Dutch. They all got along. They all played together. They all taught each other how to cook. I thought that was pretty cool. So that is why we have all the different churches. And yes, unfortunately, some of them are defunct. But we still do have several different types of churches within our community. I found this one to be interesting. Down on Delaware Avenue, across from George's, there is a building that if you take a good look at it, all of a sudden you're going to realize that was a church. I also found out it was the Calvary Light Fellowship Church of God. It was built in 1929. It's now a spa, a pet groomer, and apartment, but I also was told by a local that it also was a funeral home at one point. So it was definitely interesting to hear how those, like, there's so many buildings in town that have had so many different faces. It would be interesting if they could just open up and talk. Think of the stories they seriously would tell. So how did we get the Little White Church in Palmerton? So our wonderful, adorable Little White Church, how we got it? Jacob Snyder donated the land for it, and Jacob Bowman, I don't know how you want to say it, donated $700 for its construction. That was in 1844. Several congregations have used it throughout time. Some just as a place to meet because part of their church was being built. Others didn't have a place to be, so they used the Little White Church. In fact, after it was done being a church, it was also used as a school for a little bit of time. I just find it fascinating that, again, that building had so many different reasons for its existence. In 1993, the Lehigh Gap Historical and Preservation Society had purchased it. That is now the Palmerton Historical Society. So it's not as lengthy of a name, but we still do good things. But that's how that ended up becoming part of the Historical Society. We purchased it in that year, 1993. So, how many of you have swam at the big one? Oh, come on, there better be hands. I was going to say, I spent every summer there. So I know that my mom probably told me why it existed. And And I'm sure I tuned her out and was thinking of all the fun things I was going to do at the pool that day while I was getting that history lesson. But it is really important why we have it, and she really is a treasure to this community. So that was built. The money was raised. They did like an ask throughout the town, and the town gave so much, and then the zinc company ended up matching funds up to a certain amount. So that's how we have that big, beautiful pool. Who needs some help right now? I know she needs a little tender loving care, and I hope that we can always have that, because this is why I said to you, I think if you learn the history about something, I think you understand its worth. Like, I didn't realize initially, that it was for the memorial for the veterans from World War I and World War II. Some of them gave that ultimate gift. They fought for us, and that's what our town decided to do to show our thanks and have them always remembered. So next time you go up there, do me a favor, and instead of going right past it, take a look at that memorial right as you pull in, and then continue on and enjoy your time at the pool, because that's why it was there. It was dedicated in 1947. And it sits on 55 acres. The pool itself is 225-foot long public swimming pool. At the time it was built, it was the biggest megalith pool east of the Mississippi River. So she was huge, and we were definitely on the map for that one. I also remember not only, there were tennis courts up there. I remember, I can't play tennis to save my life, but I remember walking down and watching the people play tennis. I remember learning how to play volleyball there. I took swimming lessons, thank God, so I didn't drown, because I wanted to be there every day, and that's my point. Like, you know, that's a big part of my own personal history, but when I found out more of the history of it and why we actually have it, that even solidified it more for me. So, I wish I would have been able to see this. I was not on this planet. So here's an interesting thing. Citizens National Bank, well, Citizens Bank and Trust, I should say. How did that start? Well, in 1917, Citizens Bank was established. Not that one, a different one. And then Palmerton Savings and Trust Company in 1920 merged those two. So 1920 was Palmerton Savings and Trust Company. Then in 1928, those two decided to merge and form Citizens Bank and Trust. So they built a then very modern building. How many of you had the pleasure of going in that building? Not always. We got some people here that might not have been there from that time. I remember being a little girl walking in with my mom as she was paying her mortgage and just being in awe. Like, I remember my eye could not stop looking around, and the cool looking vault. I really hope whoever does whatever they're going to do with that building, I hope they do justice for that building, because it will be something that will stick with me for as long as I'm on this planet. Ha! Who has Blue Ridge cable here? No groaning, no nothing. Who has Blue Ridge cable here? Yes. So, how do we get Blue Ridge cable? Well, our geography. I learned this fact from the gentleman standing right back there. So, our geography has no problems with radio signal, because radio signal can go up and over and down and wherever. It just really bends. TV signal does not. So when the people who did have TV back then, if they turned it on, it would be snowy. So and it's because of the mountain. So in 1951, the Palmerton TV Single Corp was founded under the leadership of Claude Reinhard. So that's how it started. He convinced a bunch of people to install an antenna on top of Blue Mountain. And they fed the signal to the local subscribers, and it was one of the nation's first cable TV operations. Again, little old Palmerton. You know, depending on when you were raised here, you have a different attitude towards this town. And to think that we were the first for quite a few things, like, blows my mind still. Because unfortunately, Palmerton also got the rap of, it's just little old Palmerton. Well, guess what? We got a lot of things, and we did a lot of things, and we still are. So he wanted to, we only got 3 channels. It was Philadelphia channels 3, 6, and 10. So now here's something more funny. So the Sokol Hall, so on September 12th, 1951, Palmerton residents met at the Sokol Hall to be part of history in the making. So TVs were borrowed from local retailers and hooked up to the cable. Those snowy channels, they were crystal clear. So that's how Palmerton got their cable. So that's how that all started. Okay, I'm gonna show this chauvinist thing right now. So as a woman, I wouldn't want to stay home. There's nothing wrong with it. My mom was a homemaker and she was wonderful. But so where could I have worked back in the day in Palmerton? So anybody want to tell me some places?
The hospital.
Any place else?
Clothing factories.
Mm-hmm.
Women's dress stores.
Uh-huh. So, Reed and Lovett Silk Throwing Mill was on 2nd Street and Franklin, and that was 1903, and they were in business for 30 years. That's pretty impressive. So, another place, the General Cigar Company, and that was located in the Palmerton Supply Company, which I did not know where that was, but any of you who know where the 3rd Street building of Pencor is? That was it. And that was in 1913. Girls 16 years and older could earn $5 a week learning how to do their job at the cigar factory. After becoming efficient, they could possibly earn $20 to $30 a week. So that's what was entailed for the people who didn't want to go to school. People who wanted to go to school, hospital. So the Palmerton Hospital graduated 224 nurses between 1914 and 1951. So if you were a lovely lady, you could work there. You could have gotten your education there and proceeded to spend the rest of your days there. School teachers, this I found odd. So school teachers, especially elementary grades, were mostly women. That didn't shock me. But it was single women. When somebody got married, they got kicked out. I was like, oh, well, that's nice. So that was interesting to find out. So the Zinc Company, what year do you think that they employed their first woman in the plant? What was that? Oh no, go ahead, I want to hear it. 1974. Again, found that interesting. But in the 1950s, we got a lot of garment manufacturing. Why? Because they moved out of New York City and they moved to this area and ended up, there were quite a few mills for many, many, many years, not only here, but throughout Carbon County as well. I didn't know how this started. Anybody help out with CACPAC here? Even if you donate. So, how did CACPAC get started? In 1969, Walter Furler, a parishioner of St. John's Episcopal, was diagnosed with kidney disease, and he needed dialysis or else he would die. So a group of ministers from different locations in Palmerton, so not just Episcopalian, all different ones, worked together to raise the money to purchase the machine and teach Walter's wife, Martha, how to treat her husband. So that's how initially CACPAC got started. If I didn't already like that organization, I really like it now. So what does it stand for? I've only ever known it as CACPAC.
Christian Action Council of Palmerton Area Churches.
You are correct. Yes, that is quite the mouthful, and I understand why they went with CACPAC. So it's easier to remember. So I know there's somebody in this room that will at least know a little something about this next thing I'm going to talk about. So I remember going to Girl Scouts in the Borough Hall, previously known as the neighborhood house, and I remember hearing bangs from a gun. And as a kid, you're asking questions. Well, that would be because we had the Palmerton Rifle and Pistol Club. In 1950, did any of you go through this? All right, sweet. So how was it?
That was your Friday night.
Okay.
Then when you met girls, then you quit.
It's always the woman, right? So in 1954, it was chartered by the National Rifle Association, but that is thanks to Willard Steigerwalt, who is teaching teenagers safe and responsible use of firearms. I think that is well needed today. So, for 40 years that continued. Is it still in existence? Okay.
He also taught BB gun.
I saw that, yes, BB gun and hunter safety. But we also had a Palmerton junior rifle team that not only competed locally, also within the state and also nationally. So again, it took one man's vision of something he felt that was important, got with the right amount of people, and that lasted over 40 years. That's pretty impressive. So one person can make a difference as far as to start things, and then having some extra hands along the way is always a good thing. So this was, does anybody remember this as the bank, as a bank? Okay, I don't. So cool, awesome. So I'm sure your vision of what this looked like then is much different than what it looks like now.
We wouldn't be sitting here then.
Right, that's what I heard. I heard that this whole section was added. So in 1928, the library was established. Not here, it was established. So that was over in the neighborhood house. So they had all of their stuff over there. And of course they outgrew it. And in 1974, they moved to where it is now. They were donated the building. And yes, renovations have transpired, so there was no mezzanine. Again, I'm giving a plug to them too, because this would be a loss if we would lose it. It holds so many different things. There's yoga classes here. Obviously, we can have speakers. They do all different kinds of stuff with kids. There's the story time. And so definitely this is a treasure that we do not want ever to see not here. So, who likes going to the festival? I know, right? Festival weekend, I never have to cook. It's great. And it's a great way for nonprofits to raise, that's usually their major fundraiser. So I love seeing the park nice and full. I know a lot of us are exhausted when that weekend is over, but it's so worth it. But how did it get started? Anybody know what year it started? You are correct. 1965, the Palmerton Hospital Festival. So I'm 50, and I will gladly admit that I, even still today, will call it the Palmerton Hospital Festival. Although in May 18 of 1990, it became the Palmerton Community Festival. But I remember being at the Franklin School and watching the rides go up as we were in school being tormented, knowing that the festival was coming, and you could see out, and when you saw that big Ferris wheel, you knew it was almost here. And then I don't know what year it left there and then came back to the park, but it has been always a great event. So, again, One of those little Palmerton things I never want to see go away. Joan talked about the Concourse Club. It was already on my thing before I even knew she wanted to plug the tickets. So, it was 1915, and why was it started? It was started to promote education, social welfare, moral values, government affairs, and fine arts. And yes, it's an all-women's organization, and it's been here for 108 years. It does a lot of wonderful things for the town. I honestly never knew how we got concerts in the park. I just always enjoyed them. Well, the Concourse Club is one of them that helps with that and makes that all happen. So, that's the Concourse Club. So I told you before, and I'm watching my time because I am not keeping you guys here too long, and I want you to be able to talk. I told you before, like, a lot of our stores have been here, but under a different name and then moved someplace else. I don't remember any of this, but so I liked this because it was a whole husband and wife thing. The Haladas. So did any of you know them? Yeah. Okay. So Mrs. Halada had the dress shop. Her husband had the tavern. You betcha. So isn't that perfect? You send your husband off, he can have a beer or so, and you get to buy whatever you want. So after it was Mrs. Halada's, then Alice Murray bought it, and it became Alice's Dress Shop. And down the road, it was the Bridal Shop by Ann Sobrowski, and we always knew it as a great place, and Margaret's, a great place to get your prom dress. When I graduated, if you went there and bought your prom dress, no one else from Palmerton was going to have that prom dress as long as they shopped at that store. And that was just something, she just was a wonderful individual. So, but that's how that building ended up transpiring over the years into many different things. So, Palmerton actually had a music store, a shoe repair shop, and it was a guy who was from Hungary who did that one. The next one I loved. The next one is a barber shop owned by Julius Winkler. And Winkler was a gifted violinist. So often when people would be walking in to go get a haircut, they would hear him playing the violin. Did anybody, and I don't know when they were alive, did anybody know him by any chance? That had to be interesting. That truly had to be interesting. There were ladies' dress shops. There were men's shops. There was a Mendelssohn shoe shop. Grocery stores. So growing up, we either went to the Golden Key, for me. My mom either shopped at the Golden Key or we shopped at the Acme. But there was a place called Mooney's. Any of you ever shop at Mooney's? Oh, I see a lot of hands, all right. And I heard a lot of, so that had to bring up some good memories. So I did not realize that it was family owned. The father was Jacob Mooney, and the sons were William, Ralph, and Jacob Jr. It started at, and I did not know the difference between a small grocery store and a small supermarket. So it started as a small grocery store, and it was built into a small supermarket. So in the early 1900s, if I went for eggs, milk, bread, I would go in, I would tell them what I wanted, they would go get me it, bring it back to me, they would check it out, they would bag it. So that was a grocery store. When they went supermarket, you went and got your own stuff. They were still there to check you out and bag. But also, the other thing that they were kind of innovative with is they were the first to run full-page ads and featured their specials. Now, this will be a shock to the system. A round steak was 12 cents a pound. A nickel for a loaf of bread. I was like, oh my God. No wonder my 93-year-old aunt is having a coronary these days. So the original Mooney store was converted into a garment factory. And in the basement, this is interesting. James Ziegler had a small upholstery poster, whatever. And thank you. And furniture repair shop. He also was the funeral director at the funeral home right across the street. So I found that to be funny because he already was doing the whole two-job thing. Let me select the next one. So some of these kind of reminding you of some of your time in good old Palmerton. I was going to say, I can tell you, as that Tommy's, I never got to go in. When it was reinvented as Tommy's, then I got to go in. But yeah, originally, that would have been one of those items that would have been a not necessary item. So we didn't get to splurge that way. So you know where I'm talking about when I say where Little Bombers is now?
Yeah.
Anybody know what that originally was? I know there was a Waldorf hotel. So, and which I find funny because now I get why Dean and Angie, who had it as their Dynamite Dean, but then they would run the Waldorf out of it. Now I understand where they got the name. So it was the Waldorf Hotel. It was also American Legion. It was a garment manufacturer. And now it has all the little kids running about. So that building has seen so many different kinds of businesses. Definitely, you know, it has to have stories to tell, even today. So, let's see here. Oh, we had, back in the day, 3 full-service hotels and 3 banks originally. We were very self-sufficient with all different kinds of businesses. And by 1920, Delaware Avenue was booming. That's why I said, I really wish I could put on that cloak and go back in time. I would love to see how this was. Anybody remember the Palm Theater? So, I told you I did not want to stand up here and talk the whole time. So give me a movie that you saw at the Palm Theater.
Jaws.
Nice.
Love Story.
Nice.
Dr. Zhivago.
Wow. So my memory of the Palm Theater before it burned down was my dad and I went to see The Jungle Book. And I had a cough, and my dad had those Smith cough drops that were licorice, and he gave me one so I would quiet down and not ruin it for everyone else. But that was, I have a few memories there, but unfortunately that thing burned way too early.
Where was it? I mean, I remember going to the small kid, but where was that?
So where the mid-rise is now, that's where it would have been. Yep. Another, what was that?
They had free movies and shopping time for Christmas.
Oh, that's cool. Did you hear that? They had free movies at Christmas, like for shopping time. Yeah, that's really cool.
And on a Friday night on the front side there, next where you would go into the movie theater, Blue Ridge Cable used to do live television shows on a Friday night.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Earl Sipe and Willard Stroll and a bunch of them used to perform there every Friday night live. You could watch it.
Nice.
Stand in the front window and watch it.
That's cool. Nice. So who remembers Cruxies?
Oh, yeah.
Penny candy. Not only it was a bank in its life. I know there's a picture in this slide. Nice timing. Right there it is. I love the uniqueness of this building. I am glad it is still standing. And look at how just, yeah, it has this aura of itself. But yes, I remember it for its penny candy. And now CPA is in there.
Pinball machines.
Oh, I don't remember those. I do not remember pinball machines in there. So, what was Hager's Furniture before it was Hager's Furniture?
Siegel's.
No. So, first of all, I think it's awesome that Hager's is a 3-generation store. My parents bought their furniture off of the original owner, Mr. Hager, I only know him as that. And then obviously the son, and now his son. But it was the Bozzard building. Palmerton Supply Company was in there, and they sold groceries and general merchandise. Upstairs was 2 apartments, and the 3rd floor was the Odd Fellows Lodge Hall. So I don't remember Odd Fellows. Anybody know what they were? I mean, I know they're a men's organization, but other than that, anybody know?
Fraternal organization.
Okay. So they were in there as well. Mr. Bozzard also owned a retail coal business, since everybody needed coal to heat their house, heat their water, you name it. So he again had 2 jobs going on for himself as well. Hence what led me to this one. I only ever knew the Coal Bowl as the place I played. I never even gave it a thought why it was called the Coal Bowl. It just always was. Again, it's one of those things from perspective. People called it that, so it must have always been it. Well, it was that because there was a building there that housed coal. And then the school bought it, and then it became the playground for it. So that's how the Coal Bowl got its name. So, question for all of you. Anybody know where Snyder's Hotel was? Snyder's. So, you know where Splains Fit is now? Yeah. That was a hotel. Wow. So this is how it got to be what it is. So it started as that hotel, and then the hotel was demolished in 1950. The W.T. Grant store, which was a large nationwide chain, bought the land and said, this is going. We're building our store here. So they built the Grant store. And unfortunately, the Grant store went bankrupt and then became Spillane's Variety Store, which I know as a kid, I loved going in. Their hot dogs were the best. I loved their craft section. It was just, and my mom would always go back because my mom sewed my outfits. So she would always walk back, look at patterns, and then let me pick out the fabric that she was going to make into whatever for me. So I have fond memories. Anybody else have fond memories of Spillane's? Share one. Yeah. Or the Grant store.
Hot dogs came from the Grant store.
Ah, gotcha.
They were the first ones to have the New England hot dog roll.
Nice. Which is the best hot dog roll.
And when we were kids, Santa Claus was always up at the top of the steps.
Yeah.
Nice.
The line went all the way out to the front door.
Wow.
For kids to go in and see Santa Claus.
Wow. I would have been one of those crying ones in line. Oh, yes. Yes, I would have. I have many a year of Bright's Santa pictures with me crying. Yep. Did not like the big man in red.
In 1965, the Grand Store paid $1.0425 an hour.
So what, was that a lot? Again, you're...
No, it's what they paid me.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I didn't know if that was a fair wage or a little higher than fair or whatever.
To me, it was money.
I gotcha.
It bought something then.
There you go. So I have to, and I am watching my time, I have to bring this one up because I have to tell you, when I walked in, I literally started to cry. Shays. So, I know probably a lot of you have many memories of Shays. So, it was a generational store, and so here's how it started. It was the home and hardware store of Bert Shupp. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the last name. A young salesman from Allentown Paint Company walked into that hardware store, and that would be Donnie Shea, and him and Mr. Shupp became good friends. So then over the years, and as Mr. Shupp was getting older and wanted to get out of that business, he sold to Don. So Don wasn't in business very long before fire destroyed his home, not only the business, but that was their home as well. And he rebuilt it and it was one of the largest privately owned hardware stores in the Lehigh Valley. So I got to share my story, and then I want to hear another story about Shays. So I just remember being a little kid. I tagged along everywhere my father went. I didn't get annoyed until I got a mouth. And so I was always his little shadow. But we'd always go into Shays, and he would be like telling whatever he needed, blah, blah, blah. And it was just like walking through there, and everybody would be super friendly, and you'd be chit-chatting. And forever for me, my dad would go there to buy his seeds, his peas, his onions, his potatoes that he planted in his garden. So for me, that place definitely has some memories. So now that I told you mine, I want to hear yours. So somebody tell me a Shays story.
Wasn't Siegel's department store?
Right.
Siegel's was next to it. So Siegel's by the bridge.
Combined the two.
Yeah. But when Siegel's was Siegel's, oh yeah, you went there. I got my shoes there. I got my mom made me wear dresses. I would always get to pick out my dress there. But yeah, that was another. Oh, believe me, I could have went on and on with this, but time is of essence. I do not want to make anybody sit here too long.
May I tell a Siegel?
Of course you can.
Hey, those of you remember, there was Izzy Siegel and his brother, I don't remember his name, Albert. And there was a little barber shop in a little tiny building just next to the grand store. Remember, it was like a one door. And I would be in the store, and I'd go up and get a haircut. And Izzy would come in every Saturday morning. I'll give you a pair of socks if you let me go in front of you. I had more socks. Honestly,
That is great.
I'll give you a pair of socks if you let me go in front of you.
That is great. I don't know which one it was. They always sat right at the top of the steps. Okay. Yep. Okay, as a little kid, that would have scared me. So, I was going to say, there's another one looking up, and there's the Grant store. I'm just going to stand up here and go through some of these. If you guys want to, only because it's 7:30 and I know I got to get you all out of here, I thank you for all of your time. And I thank you for letting me tell some of the history that I found super interesting.
That's the original Mooney's.
Oh, is it? Wow. Well, and hence, okay, so I told you I was putting up these photos because I want you in the center. I want you to see all the stuff and all the information that we have on Palmerton, and we can always add to it. If any of you ever have a story you want to share, or if you have some old photos that you don't mind, you don't have to give them to us. I can always get copies made. But that's how history lives, and by passing it on. So let me just keep going, because I know there's a few more. Again, I don't remember it, but I knew enough of you would and have that kind of reaction. Look at that. There's a butcher shop. Look at all the hats. That one I just had to share because, wow, does it look old.
That's a little barber shop next to the grand store. It might be.
Oh, gotcha.
It was more than it was a barber shop and 100 others.
Gotcha. This was the breaking ground of Delaware Avenue. She did have style. My grandmother's sister worked there. Oh yeah? First job? So this was the Catholic church that was on fire line that burned. That was the inside of it. That, I'm not, honestly, I'm thinking that was the church because I think when I photographed it, it was both the same thing. but I had never, and that is the best that picture is going to be. But I thought it was interesting just even how the top is and stuff. Commencing Fire Company, #1. And that might be the end of my, yep, that might be the end of them. So thank you again for sharing your evening with me. I hope I didn't bore you. I hope you found some interesting. I hope I took some of you down memory lane, because that's what I was hoping to be able to do. And I'm hoping for those of you who didn't know some of this stuff, now you have a bigger appreciation for some of the things in our lovely little town. Any questions, comments? Well, I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope to see all your smiling faces in November when I'm not up here, and it's Mr. Dwell talking about our vets. But other than that, have a great night. Safe journeys home. Thank you.